evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, October 26, 2022. At 6 p.m. This is the Gloucester School Committee, and we are meeting at the Gloucester High School, 32 Leslie O. Johnson Road in Gloucester. I will state that the mission for Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. Consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you are watching on a computer or device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. Present at this meeting is Christy Lambert, the Assistant Principal at East Gloucester, Matt Fusco, Principal at Veterans Memorial School, Amy Pasquarello, the Assistant Superintendent, Ben Lummis, our Superintendent, Keith Minio, School Committee, Melissa Sarah Prince, School Committee, myself, Kathy Clancy, Sam Watson, also School Committee, Bill Melvin, School Committee, Laura Leeson, School Committee, and Mayor Greg Berga, School Committee, and Maria Puglisi, our Recording Secretary. I ask that you all stand as they come.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is oral communications. And I will read the guidelines for oral communications. The public shall have the opportunity at every school committee meeting to be heard under oral communications. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to the school committee business to appear before the school committee, state their problem without debate, and the matter may be referred to the proper subcommittee. For items that are on the agenda, members of the public may address the committee with the permission of the chair. Persons speaking under oral communications shall be limited to 3 minutes each and shall submit a copy of their prepared communications to the recording secretary. The school committee chair shall not allow complaints as to individual performance or character. That said, I just want to address if anybody wanted to speak about the school naming or the attendance zones. We have had plenty of opportunity and process where people have been heard, public hearings on both topics. So hopefully everybody has felt heard and included and brought along on a transparent process. So we will not be taking public comment on that topic, those two topics. So is there anybody in attendance that would like to speak under public comments? Okay, seeing none. We will move on to recognitions. Anyone have any recognitions? Mayor Greg Berga.
So this Saturday we had the city Halloween party at Stage 4 Park. Thank God it was good weather. The fallback was going to be here at the field house. But I just wanted to recognize Andrea Perella and the preschool program, because my wife I put in charge of the event, and they reached out to her to say they had an event planned for the same day and asked if they could piggyback, and they did. So they had set up a couple of tables. They did cookie decorating, and they were there through the whole thing. They ran out of supplies, not cookies, but the decorating stuff. So great job by them. And I keep reminding me, the face decorator, we closed down at 4. The face decorator was there till 5:30. Wow, the line just never stopped. So thank you to her. So great time. Can't wait till next year.
Very nice. I have a recognition. I was just made aware last week that there is a Gloucester High School graduate who became passionate about musical theater, and she has a leading role on Broadway in Into the Woods. Her name is Katie Garrity, and I think we'll remember that she was somebody we would see sing at different events. And certainly had a presence then, and she clearly is being rewarded for her talents and her studying hard. She was also in another Broadway show called Groundhog Day before the pandemic, and she is currently also part of a new musical called Bliss that you can see a little clip on YouTube. So if anybody is going to New York City and are inclined to go see one of our own, I encourage you to go support, and you'll probably enjoy a terrific show. Okay. Bill?
Yeah, I just want to recognize the high school students that went to O'Malley and spoke to the middle school students about finding their path here at the high school and kind of setting the table for the 8th graders coming in to 9th grade next year. A little bit more comfortable and to know that there's plenty of opportunities here at Gloucester High School.
And some photos to show from that, if it would be okay to chime in at this point.
Sure.
About that. Well, thank you, Mr. Melvin, for sharing that. And I was going to share a bit of it today too. Not there yet. Here we go. So just let's get this. So as Mr. Melvin was saying, that's not what I want to do. That's what I want to do. Almost there. Is just the students that I think there are 19 of the high school students, high school seniors mostly came, diverse group of folks. They challenged the O'Malley's 8th graders to get involved and step into something new. They shared the huge range of programs, classes, and activities that they participate in as individuals and groups. I mean, students are doing 4 and 5 different activities, but then the range of activities and programs and classes they're involved in are incredible. They boasted about the excellent academic programs and the very wide range of course offerings we have at Gloucester High. And then they shared what they love about it, from the camaraderie of playing sports together, being clubs together, to learning deeply with their classmates and the teachers. I've got a couple of photos. You have the ROTC, members of the ROTC program doing a like a field exercise type thing. That's what they call it, but it's with the color guard. Drill team. Thank you, drill team. So you get it. Over on the right hand side, Shirley Dowd showing some of our robotics programs and what you can do by building great robotics and engineering programs. These are the students. So this is sort of the mix of students you can see. That's not even all of them there. It's most of them on the right hand side. But Seamus Buckley, Chloe Gaspé, Beaubien, Eliana Cracciola. I apologize if I messed up. Cracciola, thank you. People help me, please. Penny Keys, Lanisha Jenkins, Alex Polizzi, Jackson Pereira, Catherine Sargent, Kaiki Barbosa, Samuel Rodriguez, Camilla Wilkins Bowen, Emily Gossam, Kelsey Frontero, Rosalia Ferrara, Kevin Silva, Justin Lark, Shirley Dowd, and Elijah Saruf. So really big thanks to those students for coming over and sharing the enthusiasm that they have and energy, excitement they have for what they've been able to accomplish and do at the high school, and for really putting, not only pushing, but supporting our 8th graders and making a choice to come to Gloucester High next year. Thank you so much.
Had I known it was on your presentation, I would have.
I told you. I'll surprise you.
Laura, can I ask a question about it, or should that wait till that presentation? Yep. So amazing. I'm just wondering, since it's October, is there a plan to sort of replicate or do another one of these in the spring?
Well, thank you. First of all, tomorrow night here at the high school is a presentation by staff members, school leaders, and students for families, for students and their families. So that's the next step. And then there'll be, I think, other steps as we continue to make a transition with folks in. It's something we want to continue to do. We've been building it better and better over the years, but I want to continue to work with James Cook and support his team on making sure it's there are a bunch of different ways that we're making sure that families and staff and the community know how many great things are happening.
No, it's great to start early. Just hoping it sort of continue.
Yeah, it can work.
Okay. Next, we have our Student Advisory Council. And you don't have a name on your screen, otherwise I would. Oh, there we go.
Mine, sorry.
No, I mean, it's the way my view is here.
No worries. It's Adriana.
Adriana, you may let us know what's going on at Gloucester High School.
Okay, there's a decent amount, so I apologize. But last week, the ADL spent 3 days at the high school training 31 of our students to become leaders in the World of Difference program. The training helps teens recognize and address personal issues and instructional prejudice, as well as discrimination, helps promote inclusive schools as all trainees come from different backgrounds. And then on December 6th at 6 p.m., in the GHS auditorium. Lynn Lyons, who is an international speaker and famous author of the book Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents, and the Anxiety Adult, is coming. They'll be speaking to parents in the community on ways to support kids who struggle with worrying or anxiety. And then any forward questions can be asked, forwarded to Amy Cam. The GHS Theater Program has their annual Kids Halloween Carnival on Saturday from 1 to 4 in the GHS cafeteria. There will be concessions, games, and prizes, which will actually help their fall play, which is Clue, which opens on Thursday, November 17th and runs till Saturday, November 19th. The times of the shows are 7 p.m. on the 17th and 18th, and then on Saturday the 19th, it's 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. shows. The GHS Health Center, Youth Advisory Council, and Garden Club are working on an upcoming project to plant large tubs with perennials and springtime bulbs outside the atrium entrance at the high school. As you guys said, the GHS students from National Honor Society, Student Council, ROTC, athletic programs, and robotics went to the middle school yesterday to speak to the 8th graders about all the opportunities that we offer here. This past week, NHS sold pink and yellow ribbons at lunch and the football game for breast cancer and the victims of Hurricane Ian. All proceeds will be going to the organization soon. We also started to make Thanksgiving baskets as National Honor Society for those in need. So far, we have a total of 38 baskets. And with the support of Lisa Williams, the special education director, and also classroom teachers, paraprofessionals, Alice Morris, who's the transition coordinator, connected with the transition program participants, and life skills students with Viability, which is a student state organization do pre-employment transition services. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on. In result of this, 80% of each group is getting paid for internships and vocational training. And then finally, for the seniors, the senior class is holding a bowling fundraiser on November 10th at Cape Ann Lanes for our teachers in order to raise money for our future events. It is a night for teachers to have fun and have like a good time. And the seniors have also been busy working on college essays as early action approaches on Tuesday. Teachers have been a good help by writing recommendations for us, as well as editing our essays. And that's all.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
Adriana, what was the date on the speaker coming in?
It is, 1 second, December 6th at 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m. Thank you.
Yep, in the auditorium. You're very welcome.
I see no more questions. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Adriana.
Okay, next item of business is the consent agenda. Does anybody have any items they would like to remove?
I don't want to remove, but I just want to point that the warrants aren't in our packet, but they were signed, and I'm sure Gary can get us a copy if anyone is interested to see that. Usually they're in our packet. I know they weren't tonight, but they were signed last week.
They will be on the next round. Absences have been hard to
Yeah.
And are we gonna pull out the, just discuss the field trip request?
If you would like to, sure.
So I don't want to remove it, but I want to sort of have I have a question.
Okay, so let's talk about field trip.
So my only question, I'm really excited that they're getting to go back to Washington, D.C. I think that's amazing. Just one question. I saw that there was supposed to be a nurse and there can't be an O'Malley nurse. So just wondering what the protocol is for finding someone else. But I saw.
Sure. So Lynn Keith is also here to answer questions, and that I think that's in process. So we'll continue to work on that.
Oh,
Because obviously we need someone to go. Lynn, I'm not sure if you've got more details on specifically on the nurse right now.
I can. So we're looking at both ends. We have a potential available person who's connected with one of our APs. So the question will be some fundraising around that, which I have discussed with PTO. So the thought is that we will try to raise funds to pay for the nurse. It will be a little more expensive to have to pay the full boat for the nurse as opposed to having just paying beyond the workday. So that's, you know, I've shared with PTO the projected amounts for those costs, and they didn't balk at it, so that's good. So we'll be looking for donations and fundraising to cover that cost.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so,
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
okay, Maria, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Verga,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes. Consent agenda is approved. The topics we've all been working on for a long time, and combination of a couple very important matters in business before us. The first one is an update on the school attendance zones.
Would it be possible for you just to acknowledge a few other folks as we begin, just to present my report?
Absolutely.
Sorry about that. Do not share this. Before I share that, I'll just show this flyer for people because I'm going to speak about it in a moment, called Positive Solutions for Families. It's a workshop that we're doing, Gloucester Schools, Gloucester Preschool actually, is doing with Pathways. And 10 families are involved, are participating. This for the first time we put it on together with Pathways. 10 families are participating. It's a free 7-week workshop. They are learning about play as a powerful parenting practice. Alliteration. Play as a powerful parenting practice. Helping your child handle disappointment and also helping them learn how to problem solve. Strategies to promote positive behavior and facing the challenges of everyday routines. And sort of the driving question is, why do young children, preschool age and younger, do what they do? So I had a chance just to say hello to folks this evening, but I think there are 3 or 4 workshops into it, into the process, but it's the sort of thing that we hope to do more and more of, you know, working together, working with a community engagement coordinator to help parents understand some of the ups and downs and challenges and newness of being a parent at all different steps along the way. This is one thing that we do with Pathways. And also, we're also starting to partner Pathways on English language classes for our newcomer families as well. So it's something we've been doing for a long time, but we have access to a lot of families, and so that can help them as well. So a couple more things just to point out. I mentioned that. I mentioned the students helping high school students. Gloucester High School was awarded this sportsmanship award for our high school athletics this week through the MIAA. There are 9 districts in the MIA, and there's 1 school in each of those 9 districts that is granted, receives this honor each year. And so Gloucester High School athletics is the winner in District 5 this year. And the award ceremony will take place at Gillette Stadium on November 10th. And I think we have up to 10 folks we can bring along, coaches and student athletes, to that award ceremony. So that's a pretty good deal. Yeah, and then another piece is just a.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
So how does that selection work? Do they coaches of others involve a coaches vote? How does that work?
We don't really know yet. So just try. This will have to try to find that out for us, but doesn't quite know the details of it yet. But knows that it's all, like I said, one of 9 schools across the district, across the state rather. So they feel pretty good about it. Yeah. So another piece I want to update folks is on supporting our English language learner families. We're doing coffee. Actually, started coffee hours last year. Chris Castle, our director of English learning, started coffees with elementary schools last year, and then now we're doing middle school and high school as well. It's another way we're trying to connect with our EL families. Gloucester, as for 400+ years now, has been a city of immigrants and folks coming here, and that continues to happen. And what's I think amazing about Gloucester is those immigrant groups from different countries and different parts of the world come here, and they have really helped to form what Gloucester's culture is. Some of our biggest citywide traditions are from folks who moved here from other places, and that continues today. And so just trying to support our families. So These are coffee hours where folks come, we invite our English learner families to come to the schools in the morning typically, with childcare, offering coffee as well. But we're really just having, growing large numbers of turnout. They're not very big, 6, 7, 8, 10 families, but we're pretty excited about that. You can see some photos here. And a few things that folks really say. They appreciate the time. They appreciate meeting the teachers and meeting principals. They love to hear what's happening in our schools. We'll have a translator there as well to help them make sure that we can get through any language differences. Folks are just very kind about sharing how they appreciate the principals, appreciate being in Gloucester. You see Beeman and veterans photos from here. Veterans did have the largest one so far, which I'm sure Matt Fusco is proud about.
Yes.
And then upcoming coffee hours are West Parish and GHS in the coming weeks. One other piece of this is we're able to help our families. It's really nice. So far, they really trust the folks who they're meeting with as they get to know them. And they've also talked about needing other community resources. So because of our partner organizations we work with in so many ways, we're able to connect them to our families who have needs. Could be healthcare, could be networking opportunities, could be housing referrals or English classes. We're able to, through these coffee hours, help them connect with other needs they may have for their families. So it's just a nice effort that we've been instituted last year and continuing. So there'll be 2 at each school this year.
And who facilitates this? Been the principal? Is the principal kind of run the?
You've been to more than I have. So
Chris Castle usually facilitates it, but we have our full ELL staff on it, and the principals are there as well. So we, talk with parents and add in what we need to, attendance things, where they can get help, all the resources that are available to them. Talked about conferences that are coming up and that. So.
Questions? Great. Thank you, Matt. Yep. So then I can.
You may not realize you're not sharing. If you look at your screen, you're sharing it, but we see.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's not showing as well as we could. Right. Let's see those pictures again. There we go. Much better. Thank you. Move on to this.
Okay.
Just have a few things just to capture, sort of partly in following from last time's meeting. So just the process is underway. So we just added something here because we added another date, which is tonight. So as folks can see that we've been working on this since the springtime. A number of different meetings with the school committee and the public. And I'm scheduled to vote. So again, just to remind folks, just a couple slides here, trying to reach more sensible and contiguous geographic school attendance zones, trying to make sure that we use new school building fully. It's been a large investment from by the city and our community members. And we could easily fill this school and more from just the folks who live in the downtown area within a mile or so of the building. So we have to create zones that work well, not only for EGS, the new EGS vets, but also for the other schools and that sort of thing. So that's the reason we have to sort of look at these and adjust them to some degree. Trying to impact the fewest number of folks possible. This primarily impacts Beeman and Plum Cove, as we talked about. Trying to reduce the length of bus rides for the longest bus rides for Beeman and Plum Cove families. It does help socioeconomic balance significantly, and then also trying to reduce the immediate impact on families by having a reasonable transition time, which I'll talk about more in a second. But I also want to make sure that that transition can be equitably implemented across all families who are working on it. So another piece we talked about last time is making sure we can create an approach that can actually be implemented. One that is pretty straightforward. It can be carried out over time in a process that's not overly complex or cumbersome or extended, because that will cause confusion not only with our staff who are trying to execute it, but also with families as well. And then want to make sure that whatever the committee decides upon and we move forward with, that's approach that can be implemented equitably for all families. And so I am urging the committee to take care of, to make sure that we can ensure that all families can participate in that process, whatever it is, regardless of their ability to transport or their ability, their flexibility in employment, their housing, language, or other access. So an important piece to consider as you decide tonight. Of course, trying to make more clear and more contiguous zones like they have on the right there. That is actually the map that we're talking about. And then really the follow-up from last time, the other ones have been sort of reminders. Putting forth a 5-year transition period in response to the public input and also the school committee's consideration last time. That transition period would begin next year as we planned. Any student currently attending an elementary school can complete elementary school at that school. Transportation will be provided for the full 5-year transition period. And the students can choose to move to their new school starting next school year. Do want to just highlight there are a couple of challenges at grades 1 and 2 at both being in Plum Cove. Those are quite full classes. So just want to make sure folks know that there's a really available spaces on those grades. If some folks move from one move to another school, then some folks can move in. But that's just those 2 grades. It's a little complicated because they're tight. And so if it's 1 or 2, it should work fine. But it's more than that. We just have to sort it out basically. But that's just one of the challenges of having a transition period like we want to do. That could happen with a 3-year transition period too. So, and then school choice will continue to be available to be requested by any family following the school committee policy as it stands now. So, I think that's all that I have. I'm happy to answer any questions as the committee deliberates.
I just have one question. Can you just go back?
Oh, sorry.
So when you say that the transition period starts next year, does that mean that kindergartners who start next year are able to sort of spend those 5 years there?
That would be a 6-year transition period.
Okay, yeah. So it's really just the kindergartners this year. Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure that's clear.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Melissa?
We really didn't have too much of a discussion about the start time of the schools and any impact that might have. So I just want to keep that on our radar. I don't know if there's going to have to be any changes because of the way this plan is kind of designed right now. But I just think we need to work through that. I don't think we need to do that for the vote, but I think we need to work through that at some point to make sure that there's no 2 kids, 2 schools, same start time,
oh, right.
Things like that.
Right, where a start time would be challenging. It's not the same sort of challenging.
So just if you can report back to us on how, what issues, if any, there would be because of that. Because I know some parents raised concerns about that, and that was something I had thought about too. Because I just don't know the start times. I can't remember.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll report back on that. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Do we have the elementary schools? Are there more than, let's say, 2 start times? I mean, is there
just 2 right now?
That's just 2.
Yeah. One of the things that start time for next year is with the new building. West Parish is the most challenging school to transport. It takes the most buses for one location, also because of this right program is there. So we're just trying to figure out how to do that better, because right now it's very tight, and one miss, or one thing that happens, could be traffic, could be can really can have domino effect because we're so tightly scheduled right now. So that's why we got to work through to see if we need to change any school times in order to make it a little more flexible, but also just a little more space in the time frames.
Yeah. A bus to West Parish actually goes from the island to the West Gloucester area over the Cut Bridge.
Yeah. So that's one of the things we looked into, because there is a part of West Parish school zone has been on so-called around Centennial, that's where we are now, and hoping to get that off, because sometimes Cut Bridge can cause problems for traffic, including school buses. But the school buses actually always come down Centennial and don't actually typically don't take the highway, because many of the routes start on this side of town. They go through Magnolia to West Parish, they go down Essex to West Parish, that's what they so it really can't. That doesn't help us any to get those over, to get all of West Parish off the island, so to speak. But then all the buses, really what happens is many buses go first, and then they disperse to the different elementary schools, including West Parish. Whether that's in the morning picking up or in the afternoon dropping off as well. So we have that really, middle school, high school / tier, and then we have 2 elementary tiers. So we have really 3 different. Yeah. So it's one of the most complicated things we do every morning,
especially on an island.
Right, getting kids to school. So it's that way for every district that buses.
comments for later, but yes.
Okay. So we thank you for adjusting what you are recommending based upon community feedback, parent feedback, and our school committee questions. So we now know what the specific pieces of the transition plan and the school zone updates are.
There's one other thing I remember outlining that was a question I think Melissa brought up about, say, a walkable bus stop. If, like, at a certain point, there's a, in the transition or afterwards, they wanted to choice in whether they could, go to a nearby bus stop for the choice school or
If there was space.
yeah.
So, so I'm going to mention that. Okay. Two things. One, we anticipate that through the transition to 5-year transition period, and say if you think of the zone right now, that's Plum Cove with Woodward Beanham. As you go through the 5-year transition time, there'll be fewer and fewer stops necessary within that Plum Cove area. Also, they're older kids and become 3rd graders, 4th graders, 5th graders, so they can walk a little bit longer to a bus stop. That will help us make that. That's what helps make that 5-year transition period possible. Okay, if you kept the same number of stops in that zone, then you just keep on having these longer routes, which complicates what they just talked about. Right now, the school committee policy does not allow for transportation for those who do school choice. Okay, so I do not change that. The school committee policy. So, you know, unless you folks, so the answer is we can't do that at this point. We don't do that at this point.
So what I would say to that point, because obviously it was raised, is I don't think we need to resolve that tonight. But once we start the change next year, I think there's going to be issues, because I can think of 3 that get referred to be enough to see how this whole transition is working. Right. So maybe that's a conversation down the road. I don't think we need to commit to that answer tonight, but obviously it can be on our radar and we can work through that as the change happens.
Yeah.
To see how the flow of the transition is.
And then, you know, it would take a policy change.
Right, because I think at this point, we're just kind of, the vote, and correct me if I'm wrong, the discussion is more about the 5 years as opposed to the 2 or 3 year, not necessarily all the semantics of how it's going to work, because we don't really know what's going to happen. Right, as we proceed through this. I'm sure there's things we haven't thought about that are going to come up and we'll just work it through. But I think for the community's sake, I think our commitment of 5 years, and to be clear, that 5 years is starting pretty much this year because it doesn't include kindergarten next year. I think that's what is most important, to get that message out and that vote out, and then we'll figure out from there, like the start times of the school, is that going to interfere in any of this? We don't know yet. Hasn't been worked through. So there's a lot of unknowns with transportation still.
But also this vote does signify that we are in agreement with the zones as they have been put forth, which I don't think we've really heard from anybody, and no questions have been here that the way the maps have now been laid out, you know, I haven't heard anybody disagree. You know, they seem to make sense. They seem to accomplish the original goals that were part of the committee in the district. So that's kind of the crux of what we're doing. Okay. So with that said, does anybody want to start with a motion?
Do you have a motion pre-written, or is it just basically accepting the new zones as laid out?
The latter, yes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mayor Bergen and seconded by Laura. So now it's time for discussion.
And to be clear, that vote is to accept the recommendation of the superintendent for what has been presented for the
Right,
new zones.
which includes the updates tonight based on the questions we had asked. Yeah.
Sorry. So, and do we want more detail in the motion, or we are fine?
I think we're covered.
Yeah.
Because it's already documented.
Thank you.
I just wonder whether it should be verbalized to parents over this meeting. Maybe we don't need to do that. Maybe it's fine. But do they need to hear exactly what we're approving or not approving?
Well, that's why I said accept the recommendation of the superintendent as to the new boundaries or the new zones.
Yeah.
Right? 'Cause we had them, they've been discussed, and it was his recommendation. We didn't change
We didn't
anything he presented other than the time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
I'm fine.
We didn't change anything that he changed since last week.
Yeah.
Yes, not last week.
Maria, you got that?
I'm sure.
But it'll be reflected in the written minutes when they're ready, but this,
Yeah.
your recommendations, will be a public document, the slides,
Yeah.
so. I mean, I don't think we need to muddle with a 4-page memo, motion when the accompanying documentation covers it.
Okay, good. Discussion.
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the last meeting, we, the school committee 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, punted on what would have been a better thing to do than what we did, which was kind of a half, I'm not gonna say that word. We went halfway, what we could have done. And it's obvious that in year 5, there's gonna be a handful of students that may be affected. But there's time to work out options for them. And I know, none of us currently are in the situation are affected by it, but I can tell you in 1999, when the school department went from a half-day kindergarten to full-day kindergarten, there wasn't enough room at West Parish, and my daughter was going to be part of the lottery just go stay at West Parish or go to Plum Cove, and we fought like hell. In the end, the parents created an additional kindergarten room out of basically a corner, which most of the schools were in those days. So I do feel the pain, so to speak. Some of the feedback that we've heard on Facebook and other social media is that this is because of the new school, that we're just trying to fill the new school. As I just alluded to, this is a decade plus overdue. Having the new school sort of, I guess, kicked it into high gear, the need for it. But I think that these changes are acceptable. They're as reasonable as we can get. The other option is to do nothing, and then 2 years or a year and a half from now, the next school committee would be saying we need to figure out what to do. So I feel comfortable enough to stand behind the vote to bring this into place, and hopefully it's another 20 or 30 years before we really take any serious action to make further changes. But the big one is looking at those 2 graphs, that basically buckshot current graph we have of where the school zones are, and the four contiguous zones that we're looking at now. So I don't think anybody can argue with the goal that we're trying to achieve. So I'm going to vote for this, and hopefully you all will support it, and hopefully we can have parents work with us to make it a success.
Okay, Laura.
I wanted to say something about quality of education at all of our elementary schools. Our elementary schools, all 5 of them, soon to be 4, have worked, much longer than I've been on the committee, to really raise the bar year by year to a place where each school offers a high quality, solid, caring education to every elementary school student in this district. And I think that may not have always been the case, but it's the case today. They share curriculum, they share programming. I was at Beeman today and I ran into a teacher who had come from, they share teachers in some cases. And so I want to speak very loudly to the quality of all the elementary schools. And I am a Beeman parent, and I couldn't be more impressed by the teaching and the administration that I see when I'm there and that I experience as a parent and as a school committee member. So I just want to, as an elementary school parent, I want to say that, we should be proud of our elementary schools, and they're working hard and they're really achieving at all of them. And the other thing I want to say is just sort of on what Greg said. I wasn't on the committees 20 years ago, but it does feel like if this is this decision wasn't made 20 years ago, then we need to do it. Like we need to. It's not easy, but I think that's part of what our job is to make decisions and that are best for the district moving forward. So I'm going to support this motion.
Yeah, just kind of dovetail on what Laura and Greg already said, but I also want to thank or acknowledge the parents that are involved in this. I thought they spoke eloquently about their concerns, and their reasons for maybe not wanting to do it or not being comfortable with it. And even in private conversations, I just was really impressed by their reasons and the research that they did, and there was some talk about, I kind of went into this thinking, oh, no, this shouldn't be too heavy of a lift. And it ended up being a much bigger issue than I really thought it was going to be. But just the research that they did, and I know there was a point there where people were feeling like, well, maybe they're talking disparagingly about other schools. But at the end of the day, I think that it was in the context of just trying to make their point. And people I've talked to have said they certainly would never do that, and think very highly of all the elementary schools in the city. And I am also impressed by how involved parents are now, how concerned and how involved they are, and where their kids go, the decisions they make. I told somebody, I said, if it was my mother and they said, hey, we're going to send young Billy to another school, she would have said, just make sure he gets on the right bus going home. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed, so get him on the right bus, and he'll be fine. So appreciate the parents, appreciate all the work that they did. Also want to acknowledge Ben and the work that the schools did and the administration did to kind of bring this to a conclusion. So very much appreciated.
I'm pretty impressed with, being a newbie on the committee along with Bill Melvin here, how we can reflect our parents' concerns about big decisions like this, and take the time to talk about it and try to incorporate all the concerns. We do have very high quality elementary schools, and that is the bedrock of our system here, our district. And we have a lot of concern about making that right, making sure it's, I'll use the word equitable across the board with all the schools. And I think we're really heading in that right direction. And I think that's a great thing that all our students are getting the same experiences regardless of what school they go to. So with that said, I mean, the biggest concerns I've been hearing from the community is the Beaman Plum Cove rearrangement here. And knowing that there are 3 reasons why we're doing this rezoning, the one being the new school. Just want to say that I think that should be our focus, but knowing that we're moving to the 5-year period, I'm hoping that any concerns about mixing up the remaining schools at Plum Cove and Beaman, there'll be enough time to adjust to that with school choice. So I'm leaning towards voting for this in that respect.
So back in 2008, when I got on the committee, it was the year after the prior committee that I believe Greg Berger was on, where they decided to shut down Fuller. And when I got on the committee is when we had to decide where the modulars were going to improve the neighborhood schools. And back then, Plum Cove, I believe, was K-2, and then 3-5 went to Beaman. And there was redistricting that happened then, and I remember the ugliness and the disappointment from the community when we were doing that. And when this got brought forward to us recently, I was like, oh, here we go again, because the pain from 2008 still feels real. Because if there's any issue that we discuss as a committee that really hits home and causes a lot of concern and anxiety for parents is this topic, right? But here we are 14, 15 years later with 2 new schools since then, still kind of functioning under the Plan for Effective Learning Communities, which generated the discussion about equity in all the schools and the alignment of the curriculums that we've been doing for years. So to sit here today and have this conversation, I feel confident that we are going in the right direction. I'm not gonna, I mean, I can be honest and say I do have a little bit of concern with the reaction from Plum Cove, taking on more students from a different area, but I believe those are issues that we can work through. There's some conversations that I'd like to have at BNF down the road, but now is not the time because it's too early to see what's going to happen. But I can say that the boundaries and the lines that have been set make sense because they didn't make sense before. I remember looking, my friend lived on Grove Street and had 2 kids, and she's like, my kids are going to Plum Cove. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm on the school committee and that doesn't make sense, you know, to be down near Tony's and you're driving past Beaman and going to Plum Cove. So these lines you cannot deny, no matter what other reason there is to have this discussion. The lines make sense, and I think that is very, very important in a school and in a community because it makes sense, right? When you're going to buy a house, you wouldn't expect to have a school across town and not be in the neighborhood that you're in. So I support this move. Like I said, there's concerns as always because it's something new and something different. But I think we've done our due diligence, listening to the families, addressing their concerns. We all came out with that same response to those families, which is great. And I'm ready to support this plan, knowing that there's ongoing conversations, but we're doing what's best for kids and families and something that makes sense, which isn't something we always do.
Right.
You say something?
Yeah, sure. I think everybody has really hit the nail on the head in terms of why this plan makes sense. I couldn't agree with Melissa more in terms of the zones. They really just make sense. I've had so many families have similar conversations with me about the confusion around the plans, and I think this is long overdue, and I appreciate the administration's work on trying to really clarify that and make it a little bit more straightforward. I think the plan is clear and transparent and, again, straightforward. I think that we've done a good job on the committee at helping families to sort of understand that we hear them, that we want to help support them by extending this 5-year plan, but also communicating as clearly as possible that there isn't a guarantee, right, for other students, for siblings to have a spot. And with that being said, we've also done a really good job of raising up how important, how each elementary school is doing excellent work. And so both of those things, I think, are what we needed to accomplish through this conversation, is helping families to feel confident about this transition, regardless of what decision that they make. So I'm definitely in support.
I'll wrap up by saying I will support this. I know Jonathan Pope, who's on the committee for a long time, I think in the past 4-6 years, has brought this topic up at different times, and it seemed that it was a messy topic, but really no one catalyst to start looking and doing something about it. So the new school thankfully gives us an opportunity to make some sense. It also provides an opportunity for more kids to have a shorter bus ride and attend the new school if they choose to do so in the short term, or but eventually those streets and friends and then in their streets and neighborhoods will end up, you know, at this school. I think it's important that, you know, with this making sense of moving things around, is that more kids will be going to school with kids they live next to or have, you know, time that they share outside of school as well. I mean, I think before it's, you know, you played for one area of town sports team, but you didn't go to the same school as one of those kids. So I think that's important. I also think what's really important is that by doing this, we kind of leveled out a little bit of the socioeconomic numbers in the community. And that's important for multiple reasons. And not least of which people wonder about that, but the Department of Ed is always looking at some of these subgroups, and we need to do well by all of our kids. And I think by, you know, just by leveling out that a bit, you know, provides more diversity in all of our schools. That's helpful for everybody, as well as those supports that come with it. I do want to thank everybody who has, as Bill said, we had such respectful communication on this topic. I am very proud that we worked through, I think, a very difficult and personal topic for many of the families that may be impacted or more would have been impacted if we had not gone to 5 years. So I think hopefully they know we hear them. We try to make sure it makes the most sense possible. If it's doable, we would like to make it happen in this situation. I'm very glad that we can make it happen. and still over time end up in the right place. And I think the only disparity now between our elementary schools is keeping Beaman and Plum Cove, you know, in great shape, new playgrounds, new modular, you know, modulars refurbished. We are committed to making sure those of our older schools are terrific learning environments from a facility perspective, you know, great teachers. Teaching in facilities that are not fun to teach in is not good for our staff either. So I think this is important that we continue to invest, and hopefully there will be that solved down the road too. So I think that's our discussion. So we, and I'm glad that we all kind of have consensus around, it means that you have brought forward something very agreeable and important to do.
Thank you.
Maria, may we vote?
Mayor Verga,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes. Okay, motion is unanimous, 7-0. Okay.
Thank you, folks. So from here, you know, from here, there's a bunch of work to do to make sure we'll get out some news on this tomorrow. But then we'll be working with the schools and families, obviously, to understand and make sense of it. And then also any transition to happen. That'll happen over the upcoming months.
Right, I just want to say one thing. If it wasn't clear in our discussion, the school choice policy does give siblings preference. So for anybody with kids who are younger that are not in school, there is that piece in our policy.
I was just gonna say, I can't express enough of my concern that the families out there may not have the full understanding of the 5 years. So just be clear that children, I don't know if it's a letter to parents specifically that have kindergartners entering the schools next year, that this is really their year of choice to decide where they want to be for the next 5 years, not once they're in there. So I just think we really need to focus on that as being a high importance message right now as parents are considering where they want to start their kindergartners for the 2023-4 year.
We'll communicate ahead of time, and also through the registration process is to me. And that's when we're actually talking to individuals, right? But we'll communicate with the families of both schools very clearly, because there are a couple of options, especially with Beaman, folks may choose to go to a school as well. So we'll make sure that we communicate regularly, also clearly, and do it in a variety of ways. I expect there'll be an article in the paper soon, but also we'll talk about social media, but also then phone calls, emails to those folks, and then working really with each family, especially our kindergarten registration, and that's just conversation. So really lots of levels. Go ahead.
Okay, just one other question about that in terms of siblings having preference for school choice. I've had a couple of families ask when they would find out, and my assumption is that we really need to go through the registration process to see what the schools look like. And so it might be very far down the line whether or not you get a yay or a nay.
The timelines, especially for things are always clear if you have a choice request for upper grade. Okay? Because but kindergarten is the timelines on that, which are spelled out in the policy, are later in the summer.
Yeah.
But we'll make sure folks understand that. Okay. And that's because we obviously have to give, before we make any choices in the kindergarten, we got to make sure we have as many people as possible who are registering in those zones. Yeah. And so that's always the most difficult piece at the latest form. But that's into August typically.
Yeah, I think it's really important that families really understand that when they're making a choice about what they're going to do.
I actually have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
No, Bill.
And I think and I appreciate the mayor correcting me a little bit on that. Was my concern with putting it into the motion, just like letting people be as clear as we can about what the motion is, because I don't want people to, but you're right, it's too much. There's too much there. We're gonna have to communicate that through Ben and let it go from there. But I do think, I totally agree with Sam, that people need to be very clear about what it is we voted on, what it looks like, and all that kind of stuff. So,
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I just have a clarification question, which is related to this around school choice. So my understanding of the 5 years is if you are a kindergartner today, the school, you can complete your, if you are registering for kindergarten for next year, could you be at the same district school until 4th grade and then you have to go? You know what I'm saying?
No, that's
Okay,
that's
so for
not-
any new registration,
Right.
it's in the new zone.
yes, that's right.
Okay, great. I just want to put that out there really clearly.
I would say that it may be a good idea for you, Kathy, and or Ben to have a chat on 1623 with Heather and Corey, just to sort of answer some questions.
Yeah.
I want to thank Superintendent Lummis for the putting together this proposal and working with us to make it more pleasing to the community and understanding their concerns, and also going forward doing the heavy work of implementing this.
Thank you.
That's the fun part.
Thank you, folks. We
Okay.
appreciate you, as always, we appreciate your thoughtfulness, responsiveness, but also working together at the local. Often liberation will come to a decision. So, okay, thank you. That is less and less common among school boards, school committees. So I don't say that lightly. It's actually very, very important. What's that?
I know that's true. The MASC conference has, definitely workshops on
Civility.
some of these issues.
We got awards from MASC too for our awesomeness, so.
We should get a word for awesomeness. Like the
Good sportsmanship?
GHS athletic department.
Yeah, we should have those sportsmanship awards.
Let's give it some time. Let's see how it shakes out.
Let's move on to the next topic.
Yeah. See if we're still up for it.
Yeah. So should we continue?
Sure, the next topic is,
So I just have 2 slides in this one.
continues the excitement of our new school that will open in September.
And that's the first slide, this is the second slide. We're happy, you see that the triumvirate here, Amy Pascarello, Matt Fusco, and Christy Lambert are willing to answer any and all questions you have about the schools, the names, the process. But other than that, it's in your hands, and we're happy to help you any way we can. Your deliberations.
Okay. So we talked about this the last time. The approach that we are going to take is to do a straw poll. Everybody has a postcard. I ask that you put down your choices in rank order, 1 through 4. Maria will collect them from us and she will tally them and she will then weight them. So your first choice will have 4 points. Your second choice will have 3, your third choice will have 2, and your last one will have 1. That way, when we can see how the weights are, we can see kind of either consensus around 1, 2, or we have 25% for each. So we have nothing. But at least hopefully this will get us, it will get us started on a discussion. It will be anonymous as to what Maria takes over there.
I don't know, I don't think we do it anonymous. This is, everything we do.
No, this is not the vote. This is to start a discussion.
But
It's not the vote.
I still think we should put our name on it, because I don't know if it's necessary. Secret ballots aren't.
Oh,
It's,
yeah, sure.
It wouldn't hurt, I mean.
Put your name on it.
Yeah.
Because in the end, after the vote, she
We
can
can tell
compile
who's
it.
writing to anyway,
Yeah,
right?
I don't mind putting my name on it.
Yeah, that's it, right, I mean, so I'm not trying to be picky, but I'm
And
just
these
saying.
are relative rankings, right?
Yes.
It's not, I'd never
No,
pick
I
these
think,
other
I
three.
think after all is said and done, the minutes could reflect, here are the 4 choices by the 7 members. And then the vote will be a whole different part of, that's discussion, this is the vote. That way there's no.
Yeah, I'm not doing it to be secret.
Oh, no, I didn't,
not
I wasn't
transparent.
implying that at all,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, keep it off their mind.
Yeah,
It's a conversation starter.
Yes, so it doesn't hurt to.
The names are on the memo there.
Yeah, so we all know the names before us. Okay.
That'd be funny. I just want to make sure.
again?
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering.
And it lists the, I just want to make sure I spell, you know, that I haven't worded it right.
No, wait.
I think they all end with elementary school.
Right.
No high school.
Yeah, I started to write something that was not.
I just want to make sure I write the whole thing.
Okay. Well, even if you don't write them.
Yeah.
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 So should we just give them some more?
Pass them down.
That's no.
Oh, no, no one's seeing mine.
Okay, so we're just getting.
I'm kidding.
No.
Yes. Oh my God.
He's not doing that.
Yeah, I just put my name on it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, so we'll take, since we probably should just take a 3-minute, 4-minute recess. Okay, we are back. And before Maria gives us information, I just want to acknowledge that Jonathan Pope is on as an attendee. He's currently the co-chair of the school building committee and has been on the school committee for a very long time. So it's nice to have him paying attention and joining us this evening. Okay, so Maria.
So the school that got the most votes, 24 weighted score, is East Veterans Elementary School. Then we have a tie for second, both with 19, score of 19. Fisherman's Memorial and Seaside Elementary. And then First Light got a weighted score of 8 points.
What's the last one?
8.
Are we muted now? Are we unmuted?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so it seems like we have to talk about 3 names out of 4. And does anybody have any questions that they want to ask the administrator before we begin any kind of discussion? No, everybody kind of knows. Okay, go
I
ahead.
just noticed it's East Vets as in possessive, veterans, not like plural.
No,
Right. Oh yeah, it looked like it was.
It's a school for the veterans.
Yeah, no. I thought I saw an apostrophe after the S, or that's his. I don't know why. Maybe it was. Now I realize it's probably quotes, but a single.
It should basically be the same as it was before.
The veterans has a apostrophe after the.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
because it's
Yes.
plural.
Yeah.
Plural possessive.
Plural possessive.
Yeah, teachers. That's it. Veterans is
Not
Veterans Memorial.
Veterans.
veterans.
School
Yeah.
it would
It's
still
My,
not-
my grammar isn't the best. I have to say.
So it's veterans, plural apostrophe. So like, yes.
Veterans. Apostrophe.
Yes.
It's given possession to all of the
To
veterans.
plural
Right.
veterans.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, all right. Anybody want to kick off discussion?
I'll kick off as one of the 2 veterans alum at this table. I have to agree with Miriam Boucher's comments from last meeting that it's important that the veterans name be somehow incorporated into the school. I think especially with all the controversy around Ballfield, I just think that it's very symbolic and it means a lot to me personally. Having gone there 6 years, my whole family, for the most part, going through. But the veterans have a very important part in this community. Throughout all of the conflicts we've had in this country, Gloucester has sent a very large percentage. I think the stat I heard is among the highest of any community. And that's my 2 cents. I just think that's by far, we had to do these 1 through 4 on our little cards. It was really 1 and then 2, 3, 4, and we're way down here on my list.
Can I just ask a procedural question? Are we gonna talk now about specifically that name? Or are we gonna all just?
I think it'd be better for each person to say their thoughts on their number one choice.
Okay.
That was sort of I guess. I was the chair 15 years ago, your turn.
I think maybe in our comments, we can kind of address the other names as well. I mean, you can express your.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to take it name by name, since you brought it up.
Okay.
To sort of
All
get
right, let's do a
thoughts
name by name.
around.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
You mean you want to talk about that name? I was really fearing that we would end up with 3 instead of 2. It would be easier for 2. So you want to talk about East Veterans?
Do we want the people who supported that name to talk first and then discuss it?
No, it shouldn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. So whoever wants to speak.
I have a question. Yeah, Melissa had her hand.
I don't have a question, I just want to.
So I very much saw in the comments, and I hear what you're saying about the name of veterans. I guess my question is East Veterans, and it's veterans, but where's East Gloucester in it? East is a location where the school no longer is.
Well, it's East Gloucester now. It's in that ward.
Yeah, okay.
We used to call it Ward 2 school, but it's been in Ward 1 for decades now.
Okay, well, I guess for me, it sounds like East sounds like a prefix of veterans. It sounds like the name is veterans, again, still, and that then we're just gonna put East in front of it. And that's just, I'm asking about that because it sounds like, from what you're saying, like you went to veterans, you know, we honor our veterans here. This is a community that is really, really grateful for and honors our veterans, but we have 2 schools coming together. So I guess that's just, it's an honest question about how we bring 2 schools together if one name is predominant.
Okay. Go ahead.
So as like Greg, an alumni, I went to Ward 2 Veterans Memorial Elementary School, and I remember having to learn to write that out because it was such a long name, and I struggled with the fact that there were so many words in the name when I was in 2nd grade going forward. I just want to put it out there, that was my first pick, and I just want to explain why, because it's a little bit different than Greg's. I have an experience in having to name schools because of different positions I've had in the past. This thought process was familiar to me, and I struggled with the word East, and that's why I wanted to speak after you, because I don't know if I can help you with this, but this is how I got past it. So this isn't my first choice, like Greg, because I want to honor the veterans. I'm doing it because I think it's traditional, keeping that part of the name. And I believe this community is a very traditional community, and I'm trying to figure out how do you bring not only 2 schools together, but this community as a whole together, right? Because there's been so much discussion in our community about the school to begin with. So the East really had me in a loop, because I'm thinking, okay, it's not East Gloucester, right? Because East comes from East Gloucester is how I view it. East Gloucester Elementary School, that's the East, right? I struggled because it seems like it's a location, but I had to say, okay, I don't necessarily view that location as East Gloucester because I've been in this community for 57 years and just never thought of it that way because it wasn't considered East Gloucester, but now it is because of the zoning, right? But I'm pulling the East because it's East Gloucester School, not necessarily because of the location. And I like honoring our veterans. I believe we should honor our veterans, but I also believe that the fact that the playground is named Meadows does keep that honor intact. Like we have a playground that was at East Gloucester, I think it's Parsons. And I thought we had another school that had a veterans playground as well, and just may have lost track in it. I don't know if it was West Parish originally, but I remember Jonathan Pope, and he can correct me if I'm wrong because I know he's watching. I thought he said that most of our elementary schools had playgrounds named after a veteran. I think Fuller did. Maybe that was the other school, but I can't remember that well. But I really hold true to the fact that I think this is the name that brings the 2 schools together. And I'll give my opinion about Seaside when we get to that, as opposed to saying that now. But East Veterans is my first choice because I think that really consolidates the two schools. And I think it brings the community to a point where we're showing that we're listening to those who wanted to take part in this naming process. And I think it honors what needs to be honored when we bring these two schools together. And by going to a different name, I'll talk about that when we get to that name. So it just confuse things now. But just know that that's how it helped me. I tried not to think of the East as a location, but East coming from the East Gloucester. And I see it being called EV and not just veterans, you know, so that we do keep that part of the name in the reference to the school.
So this one was not my first choice, primarily because I'm looking at this process as like a real fresh start for the two school communities coming together. My fear is that East is very quickly going to become dropped from the name. I think very quickly people will just call it Veterans. And then the East Gloucester community, I don't think will be fairly represented in the name. So those are sort of my initial thoughts around the name.
Go ahead, Keith.
I put East Veterans as my top choice. You know, it's sitting on essentially the foundation of the old Veterans Memorial School. So that's a big reason why I wanted that preserved. West Parish is still called West Parish. We built a new school there. And East Veterans, that's, you know, kind of awkward. I agree. But EV, I had the same thought as well, like EV, I mean, it's almost like a personal name. So I think it can become more endearing with a nickname like that. Yeah, we honor, you know, like Mayor said here, that we've committed so many of our people here in Gloucester to you know, various war efforts over the years. I think that's another big reason for me to go for East Veterans.
Thank you. I too am a supporter of East Veterans, and I think the reason is, well, there's a couple of reasons. One is I proudly served in the United States Army for 5 years, and I think it's really important. I like the fact that it utilizes both names. I never really thought about what kind of disservice to East that might be presented, so that's kind of interesting to me. And I do think, like everybody else, that it's important that we recognize the commitment and sacrifice of veterans that have come from this community. And for me, it also at least creates somewhat of a link to, as Greg said, the Private Joseph Mados, and that the whole thing that transpired amongst that. And that's important to me. I don't think, you know, I certainly have heard a lot of people say, you know, a fresh start, and I think that's a legitimate reason to name a new school. I think all 4 of the names are fine. It's just my personal preference would be East Veterans.
So I'll speak on this name. I think Gloucester has done an amazing job and continues to do an amazing job honoring our veterans. There are 63 sites in town. There are that honor our veterans. There are, among that is 40 memorials. 40. I definitely have heard loud and clear. I mean, this whole process has been combining the schools. I think even picking the site was a little contentious, or there was a big concern of what site exists and who loses their, you know, that affinity to where they went. I think through that process, we really communicated an awful lot about bringing 2 schools together, and that the cultures would be coming together in a new location, even if it is on the site of one of them or another. I think that was a very big concern during, you know, that was expressed at the time. I hear the nod to kind of honoring and the past, but I also know we are 400+ year, you know, city, and there's a long future ahead of us. And I just know with the effort that's been made to try to bring these two communities together, I would, my preference is a fresh start. And I do think that that the East will be dropped because Essex Tech went through a naming. They added some things to make people happy that it got added, and it's still the same, called Essex Tech. And so therefore, one school lost its identity and got absorbed into another.
Because it wasn't called Essex Tech until after they combined. The name of the school is Essex North Shore Agricultural and Technical School. Essex Tech came after they combined. The naming was, were we gonna give it a different nickname? Because originally the school was named Essex Technical High School. And then we found out that the legislature actually named us and we couldn't name it Essex Tech. So we had to take all the letters off the name of the school and put up Essex North Shore Agricultural Technical School. So we voted on the nickname and it kept Essex Tech. It was after the schools came together. But I understand the confusion on why you would think that happened. Yeah.
So that's my concern. And I've heard from current families that that really are going to be here longer into the future as to what they are hoping to accomplish with this coming together of two communities. They and the teachers, I think, have continued to make that effort, and I'm sure there's still a lot of adjustment. Some hanging on to old and some really embracing the new. So I would prefer a fresh name. So that's where I stand on that. Okay.
We have a second round of this.
Sure.
So, good. I hear where you come from. I say no matter how you slice it, we have 40 odd, 60 odd veterans named places throughout the city. This is removing the name. It's like, we're honoring your veterans on this site, not anymore. That's how I see it. So that's just my thought. But, you know, we
can name, the playground will definitely be named for private mayors. That's been discussed. There's also a gymnasium that could be named. There are many ways to honor our veterans. So that's kind of my thought.
And I would support that.
We can name.
We can. Okay, because I was under the impression that we could not name.
Well, you have to change policy. Is that policy doesn't encourage naming anything after anybody? Like, we don't know who that is over there.
Doesn't encourage.
Right, that's a person as opposed to a group.
A group.
Yeah. So I think a group is probably what it was the name, the person, not a broader.
Can I speak to what we're talking about now, but I'm going to try to refrain from it entering another conversation, but I think it will. So I just want to acknowledge listening to the fresh start, right? Because when I came into this process, I was thinking, okay, something new, it's new school, new name, right? And when I heard Seaside came, I'm like, how simple and awesome is that, right? That was my first thought. But then a lot of that name turned into a lot of conversations, and I'm going to bring up Seaside, and I hope that's the next school we talk about because it only makes sense the way this conversation is going. Is when I thought Seaside, I'm like, that's great. And then the initial response when I said it to people was, "There's a cemetery," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, there's a cemetery down in Lanesville. It's Seaside." And so my struggle coming to this name was, it wasn't, oh, we're going to continue to honor the veterans, because I believe this city does above and beyond, not beyond, but we do very well acknowledging our veterans in the school. And I don't think we have to have a school that acknowledges the veterans because there's so many other monuments around. However, I like the fact that it does. But Seaside to me is not a fresh start. Seaside is Seaside Cemetery. Joe Favaz is on here, Seaside Legal. So, and the other day I actually had a conversation with a gentleman that works for the DPW, and I was asking him about something. He's like, "Oh no, that's down at Seaside." And when he said that, I'm like, Seaside is already a place in Gloucester. So unless we had a different name, I can't really be a different name that I like, because I didn't really prefer the others for another reason, which I can explain later. when you say Seaside, there's already many in this community that relate to a different place. So it's not a fresh start to me. And that's how I got back to East Veterans. I don't see it that way. If it was Driftwood, yeah, because that's a name that is not associated in Gloucester, right? But you've got Seaside Glass, there are other Seasides in Gloucester. And when you say Seaside, the first thought isn't to a school. And so I don't see that as the fresh start that I would want a new name to bring.
So Seaside was my first choice. And so the only thing I'd say to that is I don't think any kid in this town knows all the different businesses that are named Seaside. And so I think, you know, while families might and people who live here might, I think what the kids will hear is sort of a nod to what's so important in this community is by living by the sea. And we don't really have any school that acknowledges that. And so for me, it's just going to continue to be the fresh start as being sort of the most important, because again, we're bringing two schools together. And over again, like Kathy said, we heard how important it was to honor both of those communities. And I truly do not think that East Vets is going to honor both of those communities. So Seaside would be my first choice.
Laura?
So Seaside was my first choice. Very much appreciate, Melissa, hearing your thought process. It's actually very helpful for me. I've never heard of Seaside Cemetery until this conversation, but I have heard of all these businesses, of course. I think for me, I'm thinking about the families and the students moving forward. Gloucester has so many, I mean, Gloucester is such a distinctive place, right? Gloucester is such an amazingly distinctive place in so many ways. And my perspective is that these are two different communities. These are communities that are, the administrators and the teachers and everyone is working really hard to bring together. And East Veterans, which was my second choice, right? It's my next. I'm sort of torn, but what it feels like to me is that that's going to be veteran school, and it's in, as Keith said, it's in that spot. And if we want to really, you know, sort of broaden this into like two communities coming together in a new way, my feeling was that we need something that brings them together in a new way. And that they can all sort of walk into together as like the first class that graduates from Seaside, or I fully understand. Like, I mean, it's really a struggle for me because I see both. And East Veterans just feels to me like we will drop. EV is electric vehicles now, right? So moving forward, that's, you know, if you start calling a school EV, I mean, that for the next generation, that's going to be like a very clear, look, we can't control the nicknames. I don't think we're planning to vote on nicknames, but I just don't want the East Gloucester community to get lost. And I want both communities to feel equally invested in building a new community together and not feeling like one community is sort of prioritized based on the name or based on the location. So that's wrong.
I don't want to criticize Seaside more than I have to. But anyway, Seaside is sort of like, some of it is a marketing background. There's so many businesses called A1 this, A1 that, you know. Seaside is one of those generic terms. In town alone, we have at least 3 companies named Seaside. And Seaside as a location is Seaside Cemetery. That no one says Seaside Cemetery. Where's your grandmother? She knows Seaside. That's it. So, and I understand the need to bring the communities together, but this isn't just about the school communities. It's about the community that's paying for the project, you know, and the city as a whole, in our view of the importance of veterans and their impact, past, present, future, of the city. I would have voted to call it Meadows Field if I was Meadows School if I was on a committee at the time. That ship has sailed. I think this is the way to still honor that legacy.
Okay, so yeah, my first choice was Seaside. My second choice was Fisherman's Memorial. I think it's clear that between the names, I think that's one that is also a new name for both communities. I think it clearly has support out there for Fisherman's Memorial. It's honors clearly our roots and our heritage. I think it's also, you know, a way for a new school to have a new identity, a new name. The school, just to be clear, has tried to be designed with a nautical theme running through it. I think either Seaside or Fisherman's kind of feel that nautical feeling. The school is a very fresh approach to color, very kid-like. There's just a lot about it that to me says, you know, one of the taglines I liked, which was for First Light, which wasn't one of my top two, but was Every Day a New Start. And I think having a name that gives every day, every child a new start is just, I just think it's the right thing to do for these two communities. So I would be very happy with my second choice, because I do think it's clearly we are fishermen. It is a very good nod to our heritage. If we're, you know, with our students, it's good that they know more about Gloucester. It might have that particular connotation. And school pride, we always want to build our school pride. So I think that's a name people could get behind as well. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I also had Fisherman Memorial as my second choice. I like the sound of it. It kind of resonated with me with Gloucester. And I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that I'm okay with that name. I think to Greg's point, and I totally agree with Greg, I would have been fine if it had been named Joseph Meadows Elementary. And I just think that I think it's okay in today's world to have, you know, names that represent, you know, a past. And I think that East Veterans does that in some way. I think that it's okay to do that. I think today we're in the process of tearing down monuments, tearing down stuff, tearing down our history. And I think that can be a little bit of a slippery slope. When I see that, I'm like, is that really the way we want to go? And so, and I am a bit of a traditionalist in that I think it's okay to name things after people that have gone above and beyond, or groups like veterans. And I think the community's coming together. I think they're going to do that anyway. And I'm confident of that. So, but again, I did support Fisherman's Memorial. And I really fine with just about any names of the four. So,
Melissa?
So my thought process on Gloucester Fisherman's, because I like that name, but how I got to my priority was two reasons. So Gloucester Fishermen, when I hear that, I think of all of our students. Because you know, we're the Gloucester Fishermen, right? Because I've been to a lot of sports games like you have, I just think of every student in our school district is a Gloucester Fisherman, especially if you're involved in some sort of club. And so that, to me, I didn't want to specifically name one school after that, because I consider us as a group Gloucester Fishermen. And then when it came to deciding whether it to be East Veterans or Gloucester Fishermen, it's like, okay, I'm being put in a position to choose between, are we honoring the veterans or are we honoring the fishermen, which to me is equally honorable. So I didn't want to go there in my mind to make a choice of who should be honored at the school. And I just went with the fact that I believe all our students are Gloucester Fishermen, and we don't need to name a school after that, even though it's a great name. That's how I came to prioritize where I was at.
Okay. Anybody want to make any more comments?
I like your input about the nautical theme of like how the school was, you know, put together as far as the decor. You know, so that being said, I was torn between Fisherman's or Seaside as my second choice, and it's kind of ironic they both ended up tying. So I do like the name Seaside and Fisherman's, and East Vets, of course, I put as my top priority, knowing that it's actually honoring the previous tradition. We're you know, like I said before, it's sitting there on the foundation, and it's hard to ignore that. You know, even if you name another name, people will still think about it as veterans.
For a while.
Yeah. Well,
for now, right? Like this, we're looking forward, right? I mean, yes, everyone's an adult or teenager now, but there's a generation coming, right? That's going to inhabit that school. And so I just think we're all coming from where we sit now. Yes, that's Vets, right? That's the location of Vets, but in a generation, that's going to be the location of whatever school is there, right?
Just to give you a little pushback, even though I don't want to, because I totally respect your position here. But that makes me want to say, well, the Fresh Start is only going to be fresh for so long too, right? So that, of course, right. So that's why I'm not so concerned about the long term. I am looking forward, right? I don't need to look backwards, even though I'm a traditional person, and I think the city of Gloucester is extremely traditional, and that's part of my reason for that name. I look forward. I can't look back. There's too much stuff out there. But so that, and this is where I'm trying to understand the Fresh Start, right? I understand the new name, but I just don't see, as I said before, as Seaside being a new name because it's used so much and not new. So we would have to go on to a different name. And unfortunately to me, I don't see another choice because I have my reasons for the Gloucester Fishermen, which I just said, and First Light, I don't see that as a name of a school, more so a different place. Even though I love their conversation about the lighthouse even playing in the background and what they said, the First Light, and I watch the sunrise every morning, so I believe in that First Light, but it's not the name for me for that school. And as far as nautical, I believe we did the same thing in West Parish. We had those big glass balls that represented Seaside. So we took that approach with that school as well, not just the Veterans East Gloucester School, as far as having the nautical in there, because all our schools are by the ocean, so that was the theme that went into the new school. Maybe a little bit more so
Much
in
more
this
so,
school,
like there's
but the colors of the
blue in the new school, you know, the nod to the water.
But then we have the wave in West Parish on the wall with the wood. Kind of took that approach there too. So I don't want to get stuck on the design of the school necessarily, because I think there's a lot of similarities between that school because we're a seaside community, right? So that's going to be in our thought pattern when we decorate.
Lauren?
So I just want to say, Fisherman's Memorial has sort of moved up for me in this conversation quite a bit, because I really hear all of us about Seaside. I mean, Seaside is used in all sorts of different ways already in this community. And Fisherman's Memorial, well, right, we're all the fishermen, and then everyone knows they're going to be a fisherman when they get to high school. And there's a lot of vibe around fishermen here, and it honors like the past of this community, like the very, very special nautical and seafaring past of this community, sort of in a nod to the past. And from my perspective, it's a new name. Right, it's a new name. There's no elementary school named Fisherman's Memorial. So I just to say, like, that's moving up for me as a way to both honor the past and move forward into the future. I completely agree with that. It wasn't my second choice, but it's definitely moving up there. Yeah, through this conversation.
Maybe my last comment on it. I think it's okay to, like, I think sometimes, like when I think of West Parish, I think, well, that's a strong name. I never, before I moved to Gloucester, I was parish mean. What the heck, what is West Parish? And like, couldn't even wrap my mind around.
My son asked the same question, what is parish?
Yeah, exactly. And
what is Plum Cove?
Yeah, right. And I just feel like East Veterans is a strong name. It it has a connotation. It's okay for 30 years from now for kids to question, why the name Veterans? What does that mean? Why is our school named that? And, you know, give them a touch point for their past. And, but again, I think all the names are fine. I just, for me, it just resonates with a strong name that has a certain connotation.
Can I ask a question to Bill? So today or next year, when those students enter that school, right? And some school students have, you know, the veteran students are already out of their building, right? So they've already left there at St. Anne's. East Gloucester students who've come up for, you know, 5 years, 6 years in their school are moving to a new school. Like they're, you know, everybody's moving to a new school. And their names really not so reflected, right? Even in our conversation right now, we're talking about veterans. That's what we're talking about when we talk about the name of the school. We're not really talking about East veterans. We're talking about maintaining the veterans' name. So my question, it's a real question, I don't know who to ask this question, is what does it mean for those students and families who are moving into this community that the old name is maintained and they don't have a place in the name?
Yeah, I think it's a legitimate question. When I compare the two names, East Gloucester and Veterans, I've just always had that, oh, veteran school, that's a strong name. It means something to me personally. East Gloucester is a location. And I thought, you know, I didn't think any less of East Gloucester School. It's just the way I didn't see it with that same, the name didn't carry that same powerful connotation for me. I totally understand. I even did it when I was just making my comments. I didn't use the word East.
I know, but you never will again. Right.
I don't know about that. You know,
But it hasn't happened in this conversation.
I will follow on with what Laura said, which is if this school had been built on East Gloucester's site, would we be pushing for it to remain the same name? I think everybody would be pushing to have a new name. If the school was consolidated on East Gloucester,
yeah,
which was a big concern, is that if this school is built on the East Gloucester site, then veterans, kids, and families will lose their community. And that was a very loud concern when we were looking at sites.
And vice versa.
Well, and vice versa.
Yeah,
so I guess really my thinking is if it was being built on East Gloucester, I bet we would be having a different conversation about it having a new name. But that's just my speculation.
And I would probably agree with you, and at the risk of losing the entire East Gloucester vote in the next election, I would
better get with the program.
I better get with the program. But I just they did that. Guess I better be worried then. I don't think it's fair to say, oh, you're never going to use that. You're never going to use the East. You don't know me well enough to say you're never going to use the East. I'm going to use the East because it's in my head to use it, and it's the right name for the school. I do think if it was built on the East Gloucester grounds, I think I would probably say, let's look at a different name. There's just something about the strength of the word veteran school to me that means something. Yeah. It's a little bit different. Full disclosure, it's a little bit different to me in my mind than East Gloucester. That's all.
Yeah, and I'll mention, because when I was at the council a few years ago, that's when we started putting up all these veteran square things throughout the city that have been there officially for decades. Nobody knows. You drive by, nobody knows. Veterans plastered on a building, East Veterans in this case, stands out and it's honoring people. It's not just a drive-by. So anyhow, I'm not being critical of the process. I'm not being critical of the work that was done to come up with the list of names, the first batch, the 10, and now the 4. My first choice is East Veterans, and I'd love to take some votes, see where we go from here.
So I just want to remind everyone what I said when I first started this conversation, when I said I agreed with you on the name, but to me, East is extremely important because I can sit here and say, if this school was built on the East Gloucester property, I would still say East Veterans, because to me, that is how I've come to terms with the word East, which I've struggled with since August 24th when the names were announced, because I don't see this as East Gloucester being the location. East to me, firmly 100% is the east from East Gloucester and that name from that school, which is how I can come together saying I support this name. I would hope I still have the votes in the East Gloucester community because I firmly believe that 100% in my being that that name represents the east from that school, not its location, because it doesn't seem like an east location to me. So I can feel comfortable about my vote and I support that name 100%. I'd like to make a motion for that.
Anything else you want to say?
Yeah,
It's not an easy decision. I'm still like second guessing myself in my convictions, but one way or another, we're coming up with a name tonight, and I just want to say it's not an easy decision, even for me now, knowing that I do have my top priority written down, but it's not an easy decision.
Laura?
I just want to appreciate this committee right now because I'm really, this is actually a real discussion and I'm really hearing all of you and I just, it's a really big deal. Like I hear all of your reasoning and I really appreciate it. I'm struggling with this clearly, but I really appreciate and it helps me to rethink names hearing from all of you.
Ed Mama's Elementary does.
It's not terrible because everyone would say Loomis. So
anybody want to make a motion for one of the top three names?
I'd like to make a motion. I move that we name the school located at 11 Webster Street, East Veterans Elementary.
Memorial.
Is there a Gloucester?
There's no memorial.
There's no memorial.
It's East. Well, I thought I saw memorial.
As it is on the list, which is
East Veterans Elementary School.
East Veterans Elementary School.
Getting the memorial mixed up from.
Did you complete the motion? Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Should we just go to vote?
Discussed
Okay,
quite a bit.
Maria, roll call vote, please.
Mia Berger,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
No.
Ms. Weason,
No.
Chairperson Clancy,
No.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Okay. We have a name, so unfortunately we did not do an excited consensus, but we have a name.
And I think
Yes. Can I just say real quickly before we do, there is the opportunity to have another vote to make it unanimous if you guys want to
Right.
do so, but
Exactly.
not going to force you into it. It's happened before, like.
So we've done this in the past when we haven't agreed. A lot of it has been like around the hiring of a superintendent where we really had this discussion, not here, not with Ben. We don't have a unanimous vote the first time. If the school committee thinks it's important to send that message, they can take another vote
Symbolic.
and vote yes, just because they know that the outcome of the vote. But if you feel firm in how you believe you voted, then you don't have to. It's more, are we coming out together after this discussion and deciding, okay, we did deliberate, we did do a vote, and or do you want to just keep it as some agreed and some didn't? It's up to the committee on that type of vote.
I think that's the strength of the conversation at the committee is, you might not always agree. And to me, I feel like all interests were represented through this conversation. So I feel pretty strongly in my vote.
I think it's reflective of the difficulty in this decision, of how close the vote was.
And know that when the school committee takes a vote, whatever the outcome of that vote is what we all have to represent going forward. You know, we don't absolutely come at each other.
Absolutely.
And I suspect that, as I've said in the past, I wouldn't want to put people that voted no into a position where
Yeah, exactly.
they put a lot of thought into it, and I think that's totally fine. I said in one of the first things we voted, I think it was the mask thing. I said, "Oh, the day will come where I'm on the wrong side of it," and how much grace do I handle that with and how much to move forward. And, total confidence in my fellow committee members to do that. So,
I agree, Joe. I'm just saying that that's an option. I just want to make sure if it hadn't come up before in previous votes, just want you to be aware of the option.
I want to come up with another option. I want to do a motion to reconsider, just so that 24 hours later, no one can say we're going to take this vote again, if that's how the vote goes for the reconsider. So I'd like to put a motion on the floor that we reconsider the vote.
Can you explain that?
So,
Yeah.
to be clear, the vote to reconsider means you would do it if you were taking a vote that had some timeliness to it. So you're accepting a grant and you want to be able to spend the grant, and the vote doesn't become official for 48 hours.
So when you take a vote on the committee, I believe it's 24 or 48-hour business hours that someone from the committee can approach the city clerk or the school committee chair and say they want to do a motion to consider to have another vote.
If they were on the prevailing
To
side.
reconsider.
If they're on the prevailing side.
Yes.
So in order to know that that's not going to happen is to do that motion to reconsider right away. That's what that is. So if you're on the prevailing side of a vote and you want to have the discussion again, maybe because you're changing your mind or something, you can force the committee to have a special meeting and vote.
So just to, because it sounds like this hasn't happened yet before.
No.
So the correct
City
vote,
council.
okay, so the vote is actually,
We did it.
No, we did a motion to consider first, but we haven't had somebody leave a meeting and then go file a motion and force
so the
it.
vote would be no,
The vote would be no.
Unless you want to
unless you
change
want
your
to.
vote.
Right,
Unless you want
because
to
if the vote is no, that's the end of it.
Yeah.
If 4 or more say yes, then we would vote yes.
I see. So the.
So if you don't want to change your mind
Okay,
on the prevailing side, the answer is no.
okay. And if we don't want to revisit this, the answer is no.
Right.
In general, right?
Correct.
and have you made a motion for that?
Yeah, I'm putting, it hasn't been seconded, but I'm putting a motion on the floor, so if you vote no, that means you want the name that we
Yeah.
voted. If you vote yes, that means you want to have a conversation to reconsider.
Second? Did
You want to
second
leave
it?
the option open. It doesn't mean you are going to. It just means the
And-
option.
and a
Well, we take that
48-hour
vote right away. We have to discuss it right away.
Should we just vote then on this?
No,
Yeah.
you still have the 24 hours. If the vote.
No, this starts the 24 hours.
It
by doing
does,
this
but if
motion
the vote to
reconsider.
reconsider fails, it's like the vote to reconsider never happened, and people have that same time frame to bring it back. The prevailing side, if somebody wakes up tomorrow who's on the
No,
prevailing side,
If there are 4 no votes, that's the end of the
That's the
conversation.
end of it.
that's my point.
Yes, yeah.
That's what I
If
said.
there are 4 more
mean
yeses.
that
If the vote fails, if there's 4 that
In a
say
sense,
yes,
a yes is a failure.
a yes leaves open the option
Right.
to reconsider,
Correct.
right? And so
And it would
that's
still
an
be
option.
It would still have to be the people who voted
No.
affirmatively. No. The other people have the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm now confused.
Okay.
Now I'm confused.
You have to be in the prevailing vote.
So we're gonna try?
Yeah.
Would it be helpful if I gave it a try?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. A no vote finalizes the vote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A yes vote means that our committee members still have the option to come back within the time frame and to go to the clerk and say, I want that vote to be reconsidered. Okay, I'm not sure who can do that, but that's just a no vote ends it. A yes vote gives the committee members still the option to have it reconsidered by going to the clerk in the next 24 to 40 hours.
Yeah.
But so just to clarify kind of what you said about if you're on the prevailing side, so say I vote yes, 3 other people vote yes. That's just giving somebody on the prevailing side an option to go to the clerk and
Because in a
say.
sense, you'd be saying, I want to reconsider my no vote, if you wanted to reconsider. So it really would have to be one of the people who voted. So basically,
On the original motion.
us 4.
It's gotta be either Keith, Greg, Bill, or me to say yes to make a change.
I got it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
It's the first time for
Maria, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Verga,
No.
Ms. Watson.
No.
Ms. Weason.
No.
Chairperson Clancy.
No.
Mr. Melvin.
No.
Mr. Minion.
No.
Ms. Prince.
No.
All right.
The first time that happened, nobody explained it. I don't know what's happening. I do remember. It was like, do I say yes? Do I say no?
Yeah.
I do remember when that happened.
Still not sure.
It's so weird.
Just, Commissioner of the Chair, can I say a few things about?
Yes, you may.
So first of all, as Ms. Weason said and other folks, just want to, again, commend the committee for thoughtful deliberation. But it's a very difficult decision. I think the two folks who spoke last week, one in favor of Seaside, one in favor of East Veterans, really spoke to, and what you just went through, if I can be as presumptuous as a newcomer here to the city, identify what I think is an example of one of the core dilemmas in Gloucester, which is how do we recognize and honor the folks who've come before us and the traditions of the city, which we hold dear and are very valuable to us. At the same time, how do we continue moving forward and build a community with new folks and in a new place, as our city, as any city adjusts and changes over time. And I may be overstating this, but I don't think so. I think the discussion you had tonight and the choice you made tonight between these two names exemplifies that really core dilemma in our city. So that's, I believe, one of the reasons that we found it so difficult. Okay? And it was a very difficult decision. I'm really pleased with these veterans. Honestly, I'm really pleased with any name, so that doesn't mean much. But what I also will say, and I don't mean to dismiss the difficulty of a decision, that's the easiest step we have to take. I should say the simplest step we have to take in terms of building a new school and building a new school community from these two very long-standing, proud communities, school communities. And there's a lot of work to do on that. I shouldn't say we, these three, Ms. Pascarello, Mr. Fusco, Ms. Lambert, and their staffs are already working on this, and as the two PTOs are, as we work together. But this will take years. And building those new traditions, building a new community together, partially will be about taking old ones that exist in both places and continuing those, but also building new ones. So I just want to thank you all and thank the students, thank the community for having a great, inclusive, transparent process that was very community involved. Thank you for making what is a difficult decision. And I'm really looking forward to all of us moving forward together with a new name, a new school, and building a great school community for all our students and all our families. So I appreciate it. Thank you. And we do have one photo we want to take. There were 4 banners made by students at the 2 schools. And we have all 4 banners here, but today we're going to take a picture with Ms. Lambert and Mr. Fusco with the banner with the name of the new school. So if we can take a time out for that, would that be okay?
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Taking time out.
Thanks, everyone.
We will literally have a 2-minute.
Well, if you guys can get here, so you're on the screen.
Reset. Oh, you were.
All right.
So people can see you doing it.
You want to start a meeting?
If that's okay.
Okay, sure. Yes, we're not recessing. We're just going to we're going to have a fun
Are we standing or
These are the.
So you're facing the field.
Yeah.
Great post. All right, you can hold and sign up a little bit. Does who want to stand up behind you?
Yeah, we can after we see her.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, we'll get at least one with you.
Who are we looking at?
With you and Keith.
Who am I looking at? You?
Yeah.
Wait, is this someone missing? Oh, no.
Kathy, get in the
Can you
middle.
hold yours a little lower, Matt?
Yeah.
Come on, you're building this.
This is great.
There's a lot of people building
Very
this school.
nice.
A little higher on the middle.
Over on the left.
Looks good. Looks great.
Right.
Very nice.
All right.
Great. Thank you, folks.
Thank you,
All
guys.
right, thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Okay, so one more item of business under educational matters, and that is the enrollment report. Superintendent Lummis,
I'm going to hand that off to Assistant Superintendent Pasquale.
Awesome, okay.
Can Maria?
Need to be able to share. Sure. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the enrollment update for the school year. And as you see here, I have my pictures covering. This is just the enrollment by school and by grade throughout the district. We'll get into the details of it in the next few slides. So here is our enrollment over the last, since FY16. We have remained relatively stable. We're down about 100 students from a few years ago. And here's a 5 to 10 year comparison. There's a few things I want to point out. Our preschool enrollment is back up. It dipped last year, but we're back up to about 105. Our 10-year average has been 99, so we're just above what our 10-year average is. You will notice our K-5 enrollment is lower than normal. That is due to our kindergarten classes particularly small this year. We had a low birth rate 5 years ago, so it's playing out that our kindergarten classes are smaller this year. O'Malley has gone up and down over the years, and then Gloucester High School is down last year, but if you look since FY 2017, we have held relatively stable on the numbers. And this is just our school years throughout for grade levels. You'll notice again, our kindergarten class is particularly small. And then we go through. Our 12th graders are also a low number. This slide, we're going to look into our special education students. If you look, the third column over, it's showing a percentage of Gloucester students that are identified on an IEP or special education. Over the years, we have held relatively consistent 23 to 24% on special education plans. The good news is that we've been consistent. The not great news is you'll notice we're also consistently about 6 percentage points above the state. So that's something we want to continue to work on.
Thanks for pointing that out. Can I ask a question or a statement?
Yeah.
Sorry. Laura and I were talking about that, like, wow, the percentage is even higher than the state level. It's almost, I don't want to say shocking, but it's pretty high compared to the state level. And it looks like it's kind of leveling off at about 25%. Now's not the time to probably discuss it, but it seems like an action item that, hey, why is that so high? Why, you know?
So, yeah, well, and she is an icon.
Oh, yeah.
It definitely is an action item.
Okay.
And if you notice on the plan for ongoing improvement, there are 2 goals that address this specifically. One is the goal that is better combining regular ed and general ed, not regular ed, general ed and special education services. We're really looking at response intervention or multi-tiered systems of support so that we really can support our students before they get to an IEP. and we can give them the services without having to go down that road and fill the gaps. So we're really working hard on that collaboration. And the other goal, goal 4, is to really strengthen our special education evaluation process and our identification process and goal writing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Ms. Provo might want to say something at this time. I'm not sure. Is she on?
She was.
Oh, there you are, Katie.
Hi, I'm here. Sorry I'm not there in person, but yes, I know that we talked about this a little bit last year in regards to the percentage and how it was so high. And with the plan for ongoing improvement, we have it built into 2 of the primary goal areas, which I've been involved in both of those goal areas. So we are working on strengthening our overall evaluation and eligibility process and identifying students, and then really targeting, having very targeted IEP data-driven goals to really help support students to close that gap, and then hopefully no longer need services as they go through the years. And then Amy stated really nicely around the RTI and the multi-systems tiers systems of support, that if we provide intense interventions early on for our students through RTI, then they may not ever need to qualify for an IEP. Even if they have a disability, they should and could and will make effective progress through that model. I think I answered the questions.
Can I follow up with just one question for Katie? On the state level, Katie, is it safe to say, I mean, I guess I'm always concerned about everybody's measuring special ed at the same, using the same metrics. Is that across the state, or is that, I mean, is one town different from another? How does that play out?
So we looked at data last year on this, and I can provide an update again this year and see if other districts that are similar to our community, what their percentages are. We are, as of last year, when we looked at all the data, we were higher than, I think, any of the surrounding towns. We were also higher than any of our demographically similar districts. We also, when we dig a little deeper and we see, emotional impairment is one of our higher categories of disability. And that's another goal area that we're looking at in the plan for ongoing improvement, is strengthening our social emotional learning supports, because that is another way to build those supports and interventions in for students at a young age around their social emotional needs. That should also bring our percentages down if they're getting what they need through tier 1, tier 2 instruction that way.
I'm not even so much concerned about bringing it down. I'm more concerned about, are we measuring the same way everybody else is? Is our threshold the same as everybody else for special ed? And is that 25% or 24% or whatever that is? You know, are we getting are they getting the services that they need? And having had the child that receives special ed services, I can't overemphasize, obviously, the importance of, you know, a team plan to service kids that need the help. So.
Yep, no, and both of those things we're addressing and really looking deeper into the data throughout the district around the reading data and students with disabilities that are on IEPs. What is the specially designed instruction that they're getting, that they need? A lot of our data teams were focusing in more around all of those pieces, looking at both RTI and general ed instruction and our special ed instruction. And we're getting teachers more trained in Orton Gillingham and specialized reading methodologies as well, so that those students that really do need that are able to get that, and that we're able to see those gaps close. Does that help?
It does. Thank you very much.
So I just want to say, when I see these numbers, they're not surprising because they've been these numbers since 2008 when I came here. But I guess I'm a little concerned when I hear we want to drive those numbers down, because I view this, when I see these numbers, is that we are a school district that thoroughly in a community way takes care of our students, right? We have the benefit of living on an island. A lot of our teachers live in Gloucester. You know, we are so tight as a community in this school that we do and offer the services to help our children. And we've had consultants review our programs over the past years, and have all given us a good rating in our special ed. And one thing I can say, and it even happened the other day, is I've had parents come to me from other districts saying, I can't get my child on an IEP. You know, I know they need services. Who knows their children better than their parents right at home? And so many school districts push back on that, knowing that it's an expense. And I can say proudly that we are from a school district that cares about our kids and aren't so concerned about the costs. And you know, I've had discussions with the special ed department here in Gloucester and have had discussions with parents, and they are proud to be from this district because they're not having to hire the educational advocates and file lawsuits to get the services. They get them here. So when I hear that, I understand the reason to address these numbers, but I wouldn't want to see it as a goal to reduce the numbers unless it's for the right reasons, knowing that their services really aren't needed anymore. And it's not just the opinion that our numbers are too high and we need to drive that down.
I agree.
I think we'd be proud.
So thank you for asking the question that way,
huge.
because let me just answer, because I think it's really important to clarify this, is we're looking at our practices to make sure that we're serving students as best as we can, because that is the driving force. And I'll give you one example. It can happen, and does happen, not only in Gloucester, but all sorts of places, right? Where we may identify a kid as social emotional behavior issues, a disability, when actually it could be that a learning challenge or learning disability is actually driving that behavior. And so it is if we don't have clear enough, good enough, rigorous enough processes for evaluation, identification evaluation, we actually misdiagnose that. And that's a crucial and problematic misdiagnosis. Right. Okay. So what I want folks to hear about this isn't that we're trying to drive down numbers. This is like interesting and data we've had over a number of years. That's higher than the state average. Okay. So whether that's, and just like if we had learning data that was lower than the state average for many years, we want to look into that and understand it. And one way and there are a variety of ways of doing it, which I really believe our team is doing across our schools, which is looking closely at how we identify students, looking closely at what we identify as their goals and their learning needs, and then making sure we have consistent and rigorous process provided across all schools, because Bill, to your question is actually does vary. It can vary between a school here in Gloucester, it can vary across districts, okay? And what we want to make sure is that we're following the processes as laid out by the state, as required by the state for IEP writing. We're following consistent process across schools in terms of evaluation identification. And then also, most importantly, I think all that is we're providing a level of instruction that all students may need, because it can happen where if you're teaching a student fully with specialized instruction or other ways that child needs, they can, even if they have a disability, they can make progress without necessarily having services outside and beyond the school. And again, that's because we want to make sure that they have the least restrictive environment, and by evaluating folks well and knowing clearly what support they need and being able to provide that support in the classroom, we don't have to sequester them either into a classroom within our school or somewhere else. And so what I want folks to hear is that it's a really close understanding and analysis of how we support our students well, but also how we train our staff in different ways or new ways that we haven't yet done. I hope folks take it that way. It points out a place we got to look at, but then how we do those practices matters a ton, because ultimately the goal is to make sure we're serving our students, not hitting the number.
Right.
That's the most
important. I think I had similar questions as Bill about the percentage and the metrics used to, I'm wondering like how much of that percentage are not intense intervention situations. Like I have my own personal situation with my two kids. My son, he has his, disability as they call it, but he understands his challenges, and it's gotten to the point where he's still on an IEP, but he doesn't need much. He gets accommodations. Mm-hmm. So when the MCAS came around, he had a lot of anxiety about sitting down for an hour and not getting distracted or distracting other kids in the class. So he was allowed to take the test in another room, and that helped alleviate all his anxieties, and he did really well pat my son on the back. And my daughter is in a situation right now where she's going through speech therapy. She meets like once or twice a week. And, you know, I guess one of my questions is, my concern as a parent was for my son, where he got to the point where, you know, he dealt with his speech impediments and he still had other disabilities that kept him on an IEP. Do we reevaluate these students going forward properly, or are we just carrying on those percentages over time?
So Katie, can you just speak to that in terms of how we reevaluate students and what sort of time frame we do, and then also in terms of when you present your special education report later in the year, do we typically go over sort of the level of, you know, moderate, severe, different levels of disability? So can you answer that question first about just the presentation of how we report it, and then talk about how we evaluate students over time?
Yes. So, and you can hear my background noise, sorry. So when I report out for the special education data for our district, I will really look more in depth and report out how many students are low level of need, moderate level need, high level of need, because they fall into those three categories. I will also look more closely at what types of disabilities are coming out as higher, because if emotional disabilities are coming out higher, learning disabilities are coming out higher, then those are the areas that we want to really focus on professional development and really teaching teachers, all of our teachers, general ed and special ed, how to really meet those needs. Every 3 years, we formally reevaluate students through the standardized testing, where we look at their cognitive profile, which is really what they bring to the table as a learner, and then their academic achievement in any related areas that they have services in. Every 3 years, we're obligated to relook and determine, is this child still eligible for special education services? So we look at all of those things. Progress monitoring throughout the year should happen for students more often. And those are with the progress reports that you get that come home with the IEPs that are on top of the report cards. So they give you more detailed information about where your students are learning and what progress they've made. And just to piggyback, jump back to Melissa's point around, I totally agree, Melissa. I think that parents in this community are very trusting, and they're trusting because they're able to come to meetings and they're able to feel as though their children are getting what they need, which is a wonderful thing. And it's part of why I love being in Gloucester, is that we have that trust in that culture, in that community. So it's not necessarily about bringing those percentages down, like Ben said. It's about student outcomes. And are these students that are, like, that's the first and foremost, is of that 24% of students that are on IEPs, are their outcomes as positive as students that aren't on IEPs? Are they making that growth over time and closing those gaps? Because we really want to make sure that we have high expectations for them as well. And then with that tier 1 instruction, I know we've talked so much about wit and wisdom. And when we have that in place, I think we're going to see that we meet the needs of so many more learners in our classrooms, and they don't necessarily need to get pulled out for something different. There's more equity in having that strong tier 1 instruction, whereas special education instruction, we're looking at what is it that they're getting for reading. Are they getting it from the classroom? Are they getting it in small group? And really what's working best for them? And I think we always want to make sure we're giving students what they need. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Thank you.
So this is the same data, just in graph. Next, I want to. Oh, Katie, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say one thing about that enrollment data, because that is the data for students that are enrolled in our schools. It does not include students that are out of district or service only students. So I just wanted to, that's the students that are currently in our schools for that enrollment data.
Attending in Gloucester preschool through 12 or through.
Right, and our enrollment data always is consistently tracked this way, and anybody that we are paying to be at an out of district program is not reflected in ours.
Right. So at this point, in terms of state reporting, in terms of the out of district placements, is we'll, two different things, this and school choice, we'll be getting those numbers later when, but we report to you in the budget process, and also when Katie gives us special education report, we'll report the out-of-district placements as well. But just, Katie wanted to cover that these numbers are the folks who are inside our schools in Gloucester at this point. And because there are two other categories, each other categories. One out-of-district placements, but also services-only placements, services only, which may be private schools, students who go to private schools, or students who are younger than preschool age, or in preschool rather, who they don't attend our schools, but we provide special education services by them.
Homeschool students.
Homeschool students, right? Thank you, homeschool students.
Okay. So similarly, we're going to take a look at the EL population in Gloucester. It has, we all know, risen over the years. And when I show the graph, you're going to see it like a staircase. But if you notice, according to the state, we are getting more in line with the state. Starting out at 3.9, and the state was at 9% in FY16. We're getting closer to the state average as our population grows. And there's that staircase of, we've all watched how our population has changed as we've had more and more students come in.
A couple things on this is we've had 10% growth, from the prior year for a number of years. It looks like this year might be a little bit lower than that, but at the same time, particularly EL students often are probably a higher percentage of students who come in during the school year. So as they grow, it may continue to grow. That certainly happened for the high school last year, where we had quite a large number of newcomer students join GHS in November and December of last year. Yeah, so you may see this continue to grow.
So this data is as of October 1. So if they came in yesterday, it's not included. And this is showing our EL population across the schools. Gloucester High School remains to have the most, and then Beeman and Veterans, followed by O'Malley. Our ethnicity breakdown is here. The lines kind of get small because there's a big jump from 376 up to 2100. So just to note that. And here is our school choice into Gloucester. So right now we have, as Superintendent Lummis mentioned, we have information of the students that are in our schools today, because we know they're here, right? We don't have exact numbers of the students that are choicing out, because what happens in October 1, we submit all our data, the state takes that data, kind of works with it, and then they give us a report back of how many students are from Gloucester but attend a different school. So we won't have FY23's numbers until usually around January or February. But these are the students that are choicing into our district. With 28 total, and mostly at the high school. Here they are by grade level, same ones. This is the same 28 students that are coming into our schools. Okay, so we have more at 12th grade, 9th grade, and 6th grade. So school choice out of our district. Like I said, FY23 is not on here. So this is as of last year. You can notice it's gone down a little bit over the years. Since FY18, it has gone down about 17%. That being said, our enrollment has also gone down slightly. So our numbers have gone down as high as 10% out and as low as I believe around 8% this year. Exact. We're 8.9 this year, but we've been as high as 10.4. So we are declining, going in the right direction. Yes.
Just curious about these numbers. Do you break these down by like say grade level, elementary, middle, or out of district placements for?
I can. I don't have that. Okay. I wouldn't have that data until the state gave it to us in January, February.
Yeah, I'm interested to see.
To see when they leave.
Yeah.
Actually, what we do have is we have a data management that says what towns they go to and how many, but I think it also has grade level too. I can look at that.
And then also
historically, yeah.
Curious about like whether they go to private institutions or other public schools.
So we'll give a full report on this, like when we get that complete data for this current year in January sometime. Then we'll give a full report to the committee about that.
Still learning about
Yeah, I think, and break it down just as in the ways you described, by grade, but also by town they go to or school they go to. I just don't know, and then we also get data in a different way from the state around if they go to a private or public school.
And would this also include like, say, homeschooling as well, or is that like out of district?
This would not. Homeschooling is separate, right?
Homeschooling is separate. Yeah. Next, the next one is talk about Essex Tech. You'll notice we hover right around 100, right 99. Again, we do not have the data, although we actually do because we know how many we sent. I believe this year we're at 107. We hover around 100. I believe they have 100 slots for us, so we fill them. That's about how it goes. And that's the end of it.
I have a lot of questions, I guess.
Yeah.
The GHS, a lot of high numbers coming into GHS. Is that a draw from our vocational department, or do you know? Sports?
A few things. Sports, recently robotics and the engineering program has pulled in a couple people. I think it's like maybe CPT, maybe not as much because we typically fill it with our own students. So you're not guaranteed a spot in the program. I don't know for sure, but that's sort of anecdotal. But we can also, we are going to be start a process of reaching out to families who've had 8th grade students over the past few years who chose not to go to Gloucester High. So when they moved to 9th grade. And so we have a survey in place of those folks to learn, why do folks make other choices at that transition 8th to 9th. And it probably would benefit us also to learn from the families who do choice in, especially into the high school, why they're doing that. Because those two pieces of information, that information, I should say, will help us understand what people see as benefits and what people have as concerns. And so that'll help us, understand, do we make adjustments, or are we communicating, are we not communicating things that are going well in our schools that people don't know about, even though they exist. So that'll help us understand a little bit about some of the reasons people make choices.
Are you going to do that same kind of survey, or do you do that same kind of survey for folks who choose to start out?
Yeah, we're going to work downwards. So one thing to start with 8th into high school. Those folks are a little more difficult to grab if they've never shown up in our schools.
Yeah.
But there are ways that we can do that. That's more about helping, community folks helping us know who those families are. So it's a little further out. Meaning, you'll have to ask people we know if they know people who didn't choose, and how do we contact those people?
Right. So you get the data about how many people are choicing out, but you don't necessarily get their contact information.
Right. So we don't get their contact information. So we know where they go. We don't necessarily. So unless they, so that's why it's hard to get to contact those folks, or these folks that we have there, at least their most recent contact information. So we'll do it at the variety levels, really, high school level. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Amy. Okay. Anything else from you?
That is all set for our deliberations on educational issues.
Okay. All right, we have one subcommittee report coming from the Building and Finance Subcommittee meeting of October 19th, 2022. Chairperson Melissa Prince will provide that report.
So from a high level, our conversation started about talking about the playground update, and as we know, Plum Cove is complete. Kids are loving it, and the next steps is to get Beeman done. Seeing December 19th. I'm sorry. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is November 23rd the dismantle date, or is December 19th is the goal?
Yeah, December 19th is the goal where kids will be playing on the new playground. Yes.
Sorry,
yep.
I know it's a little bit backwards here. Delivery of equipment should be around December 1st. At least that's what, as the day of the report.
That is the current plan.
Still is now. That's good, because this is a week and a half, 2 weeks later.
It's 1 week later, it hasn't changed yet.
Okay, good. So we're on schedule for that, which is exciting. We talked about the window replacement at O'Malley. The mayor has signed the documents he needed to sign to secure the funding in November. They'll be doing bids late in December, and they're in the design stage now. We talked about the fact that we are getting a facilities grant, which is for indoor air quality or HVAC. That is coming by December 2024 and has to be spent by 2026. And I believe it's in the amount of $438,000. And the administration is working with Mike Hale at the DPW, having discussions to determine which best to utilize that funding that's coming.
And although we haven't applied for that, because it's not due till tomorrow.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay, sorry. My notes didn't put that in
no,
there.
but I can
talk about it a little bit.
Yeah,
no, you don't.
No, what we're applying for, I know what we're applying for, okay, is further upgrades and ongoing maintenance and, at Beaman and Plum Cove for their ventilation systems. Yeah, that's what we're doing. On my account that they're prioritizing, and I think that this is a good fit for these dollars.
Yeah. And the money is distributed through a formula. That's how they decide how much money that Gloucester would get it once we apply and put it approved. We looked at the fiscal year 2022 end budget. We closed out with $7,678 after expenditures of the $46.7 million budget. So Gary was right on with that budget, and we spent our money well. We talked about special ed services and the what's the word?
Volatility
of that expense right now. As you know, we set aside a certain amount of money, and then throughout the year, the expenses come in that were unpredicted, or students move into the district and things like that, or people are diagnosed that they need more services. So we are keeping a close eye on that account because we are, I wouldn't say that we're overspent at this point, but it's only November and so the rest of the school year. So we actually had a conversation about getting an update on that every month at the BNF meeting, just to keep an eye on it because it is so volatile right now. Budget transfers, we approved some budget transfers, workman's comp, substitute teachers. We talked about the unemployment hit to our budget. Are we talking about that tonight? Because I saw something in our budget.
You have an update on that.
Okay.
Which I can explain now. Gary sent the subcommittee follow.
Yeah, I saw it in the packet, so I didn't know if you wanted to address that or not.
Yeah. So let me just give you a quick background on this. In any business, if employees become unemployed for any number of different reasons, they can file to the state for unemployment benefits. Recently, we've had some substitutes, daily substitutes, on-call substitutes, we call them, who have applied for unemployment benefits over the summertime. Okay, that was new for us, I think, this year. It hadn't done before. And so we're obligated to pay for those benefits, or contribute to those benefits because they've applied for them. What we've learned since then, because again, as I said, I don't think this has happened before for us, is that it seems like an odd to the subcommittee and to us, it seems like an odd thing to pay a substitute teacher, person who's been a substitute, employment benefits when school's not in session. So looking further into it, what we learned is that there's an allowance for that from the state employment regulations, that if we give notice ahead of time, so in the spring, late winter, springtime, that there's a likelihood, assurance of likely employment in the fall, because they're always in substitutes, that then folks wouldn't be eligible to apply for those unemployment benefits. So we'll do that now, because as far as I know, it's not occurred to us before. It's not happened to us before. We think with COVID, applying for unemployment benefits became a much more regular thing for folks. So I think many more folks were aware of that possibility. That's maybe where this came from, but we don't know that for sure. So we do have to make a payment here for some claims, but then the future unexpected.
That's an update from what we had the other day.
Exactly right. And the only time in substitutes where where you may have for substitute costs, where you may have a claim going forward is a long-term sub. You can't reasonably assure that person of employment in the school year. But those are the regular number, and so you don't expect it to be this sort of cost.
And thank you. And then continuing, we talked about, we have a new business office hiring Stephanie Frontiera, who starts on November 14th. She is taking over Cody's position. And it was reported that Cody is still helping us out, so we're very grateful for that. That helps Gary out at a time very busy in the budget.
Cody's been helping with the end of the year report,
yeah.
And Gary cannot wait for Ms. Frontero to start.
Yeah.
He's been doing two jobs for a long time.
We had billed and use fees on the agenda, but we didn't have any new applications come before us, so we didn't have to discuss anything there. That was pretty much it. It was a quick meeting. We met, I think we started to adjourn, it was 25 minutes. We got great reports, a lot of information, all positive. Concerned with the special ed that we're going to keep an eye on, but we're going to move forward in the budget and actually talking about the calendar and agenda to start doing the next budget. I believe that it's going to start very soon. And that's the report.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next item is action. We've handled the first two items already. We have a grant to accept a donation by the Gloucester Police Department in the amount of $33,000, $177 from a grant they received from the District Attorney Grant for All Stars programs. These funds will be used for repairs, maintenance, and Gloucester Public Schools staff training for the Project Adventure Challenge course rebuild at O'Malley Innovation Middle School. And I move that we accept this grant.
Second.
Okay. You want to explain that? Any questions?
So this grant is to help rebuild the Project Adventure on O'Malley's site. It's also to train staff. There's going to be 3 levels of training. There'll be 25 staff members trained in the basics of Project Adventure, team building, those kind of things. There will be 12 staff trained on a higher level, and then 3 kind of overseeing really the whole thing, like the tough lines and those kind of things. So this grant pays for the rebuild and the training of the staff. It's mainly for the after school program for All Stars, as you said. And when it is up and running, because it needs to be rebuilt, Amy Cam and I believe Jeremiah and Cass are going to be telling you all about it.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. So we vote to accept.
Mayor Verga,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes. Okay, so we have one more item of action, but that we will take when we come back out of executive session. Next item is the East Gloucester Veterans Memorial School Building Committee update.
A couple of pieces of news on this one.
And the budget.
Not projected to be over.
So we continue to be on time and on budget. Always a big thing, especially these days in terms of construction. And that's thanks to our really rock solid project team. 2 important pieces. One, I'll give you a regular update, but also we're moving forward with a project funding agreement with MSBA. Litigation that the city was involved in has been resolved in the city's favor. And that is, the litigation was the piece that was holding up the project funding agreement with the city, because MSBA won't create a project funding agreement until it's resolved. They hung with us the whole way. They were well informed all along the way about the progress of that litigation, and knew that once it was, if it was resolved in our favor, that at that point they would implement the project funding agreement, and we're doing that now, and making it so, and putting in place now the processes so the city can get reimbursed for the costs of the project up to the project funding agreement, which is in the neighborhood of, which I don't know, so maybe you know this number off the top of your head,
A lot of money.
It's about $39 million, $40 million, I can't remember the exact number, but it's in that. So, but putting that so we can get those reimbursements in, on a regular basis, regular, ongoing, and repeated basis. So that's good news all around to have that hurdle, have the project funding agreement being put in place. And then just ongoing work, Building B, which is sort of the sort of group space, gymnasium, and also the cafeteria, and also the administration offices, and the main entryway of the new school of East Veteran School. How about that?
There you go.
First one to use it. East Veterans so they're keep on going with the brick veneer, the curtain wall, which is the big glass framing. They continue to do exciting work like mechanical and electrical and plumbing, which will make everything work for us. And then Building A, they're doing exterior metal panel support system for the metal panels that are on there, the colored metal panels. They're continuing to do the sheetrock installation and the taping to make rooms. And also continue to do the electrical, telecom, and data rooms as well. So they all those out. They're also on Building A, which is the classroom building, beginning to wire the radiant heat panels. I kind of know what that means.
Where's the radiant heat?
I
The floors?
don't know. Sorry, we'll find that out for you. I don't know if it's in the floors or not, but it could be anywhere. But that seems like having heat seems like an important thing.
Yeah, critical.
So those are the two updates.
So we will be going into executive session, and we will come out to vote an action item at that time after executive session. So I move that we.
Before we do that, just an update. Were you on the city council meeting for the whole 45 hours last night? Or?
I was on the city council meeting for quite a while last night.
I believe they took up the school committee stipend. I don't. BNF did the week before.
Yes, they did vote to approve our recommended increase in the pay.
Which affects the next term.
The next term of school committee.
From 5,000 to
many of
5,500.
Right, and many of them were very complimentary to the work that we do.
And I think I wasn't here when it was discussed, but it's important to note that I think when I joined the committee in 2002, was the first year that $5,000 raise came into effect. It was over 20 years since the school committee got a raise. So it doesn't impact me, but I'm just telling you, I fully support it. So I'm glad that the council voted. Comes out of the school's budget, but it had to go through the school, the city council. I just wanted to get up there in the public realm so they know that it's.
That happened. They voted for the funding for the library, which is great news for all of our families.
Unanimously.
They also referred to subcommittee the loan order for the Melee window and door replacement project. That will go to the BNF subcommittee Thursday, the 8th of November. If the 8th is a Thursday.
Tuesday is the 8th, it's election.
Thank you.
That's
right. So the 10th.
No, so it's actually next week. Close. Thursday. Thursday the 3rd. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. And then from there, we could be reported out to the full city council to be addressed, I believe, on the 22nd. Don't hold me to that.
That's it.
So, okay, 22nd. Thank you.
Okay, so I move that we go into executive session for the following purposes and return to. So we're going to return to adjourn.
We're going to return to vote on that if we come to an agreement.
Right, we would come out and because the item is on our agenda, so we do have action on our agenda. So there's a likelihood we will come out to vote. Another action item. So purpose 1 is to discuss a non-union personnel contract pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A. And second purpose is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with Gloucester Teachers Association and the Gloucester Association of Education Paraprofessionals pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 39, Section 23B.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Verga,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes. Okay, we are back in open session. We have one item of business coming out of executive session, which is to approve the non-union personnel contract, the changes for the renewal and to bring the pay in line with other people at that same position. So moved. Second. Okay. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Mayor Verga,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Okay, that concludes the action. Is there any other new business anybody wants to bring up?
Two things, just referrals. I'd like to refer to BNF, the discussion of youth sports fees, youth group sports fees to be revisited. I know we approved them recently, however, it needs further conversation.
Use fees? Building use fees? Is that
Building
what
use fees for youth groups.
Okay.
I had another one and I didn't write it down, so I could get the second one. But I also wanted to say before we ended tonight, Chairperson Kathy, you did an incredible job running this meeting and leading us to the decisions that we had to make tonight, both on the rezoning. I don't want to give all the credit to administration because I know you worked very close together and there was a lot of information that came forward to help us make that decision, and I wanted you to get the credit.
Absolutely.
Thanks, so great job. Yeah, good deliberations on important topics. Okay, motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
Maria?
Mayor Verga,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Folks, thank you very much for 2.5 months of a lot of work, very, very important work.